Good morning again. Hey, listen, we've got people that are still out in the lobby grabbing some coffee. So I've got something for you to talk about while we're waiting on them to get back in here. Y'all can talk about it as you're coming back in from the lobby as well. And we're going to do this a couple of times today. I just want to just make sure that you're breathing. So if you are, listen, if you're an introvert, it doesn't mean that you're scared of people, right? It just means that people can drain you. So when I say, hey, get together, like you might be like, no, don't make me do it. But we're still going to do it. Here's why. And I'll talk more about this the last Sunday of the month. But there's a Greek word on my laptop. It's sunathleo. And you're all going to learn it this year. Sunathleo is from Philippians 1:27, where Paul says that we strive together for the gospel. And sunathleo is only used twice in the Bible. They're both in Philippians. And it means to strive together with. I'll talk a lot more about this at the end of the month. But the Lord really convicted me about the state of the church, not just our church, but the American church specifically, that we're really good at being together, but we're really bad about being together with. What does that mean? It means that we're really good at being in the same room and not connecting with anybody there and thinking that that's somehow what God intends for us to do. But He wants us to be together in the same place with one another. I'm just over-explaining all this. Again, I'm not going to preach it right now. But I'm saying this so that you'll know. I love that God uses words like that, and He also knows how we're created. That's what we're going to talk about this morning, how we're made in His image. He understands us, right? So whatever personality type you are, and I'm the worst at knowing those. Some of y'all are into the Enneagram. Some of you are into Myers-Briggs. I take all those tests. I'm whichever one of those tests never remembers which one he is. That's the one that I am. I'm still not sure if I'm an introvert or an extrovert or if I'm just really shy or what. I don't know. But whoever you are, however you are, words like together with are not extroverted words. It's not like God said, now, half the church, you should do this, and the other half, you should not. He knows how we are, how we're wired. I love that about God. And He says, the way you're wired, the way I made you, now be together with. So one of the ways we're going to do that, we do this a lot anyway, I'm just leading up to it, is we get you to talk to people around you. We ask you to talk to people around you because I'm assuming you know the people around you. If not, you have my permission to get up and go find somebody that you do know, right? We want you to I don't want you to freak out, but we want to help you kind of get to know each other. Will you take one more step with me this year? Okay, Wendy's with me. Awesome. Now this is huge, right? I'm asking you to be really vulnerable. If you are with people and you're talking, and you know their face and you don't know their name, you know where I'm going, right? You just say, I'm an idiot. And I should have known your name by now, but I have forgotten it. Could you please tell me your name? And by the way, my name is, and just learn somebody's name, right? Let's make this the year that we move past Bubba, sister, yo, right? and we're Pastor Bridget and I, we're talking about this week, like, you know, it's a lot of names, right? And most people expect the pastor to know all the names. I don't, sorry, but I try to. Right? But like, make it your goal to know the people that you're talking to, right? So maybe the first thing you say in just a minute when you get into groups, before you talk about this topic is, oh, I am, and you are, and just like high five each other, whatever you want to do, right? Here's your topic. Are you ready? I want you to take a few minutes, and online, God help you, type it if you want to, or find somebody that you're with and talk about it. I want you to talk for a few minutes about a scam that you almost fell for. Or, if you're really vulnerable, a scam that you did fall for. And if you can't think of anything about that, talk about the scams that drive you crazy. Those are your three options. Are you ready? Scam that you almost fell for, a scam that maybe you did fall for, and then scams that just drive you crazy. Like if your phone rang right now and you answer it and they said, I'm calling about your car warranty, right? Like whatever scam you think it is. You ready? You got about 3, 4, 5-ish minutes, and then we're going to talk about being made in the image of God. Go. I'm sure we had lots of good stories. Scammers are good, right? They're good now. I've never had this happen to me. I've heard of it happening. Like people are getting phone calls and they're hearing what sounds like the voice of someone that they love. Like basically saying, please help me, give them whatever they want. Like they're good. When we first started the church, when I first got a church card to use, you know, like when I buy you coffee, that's what I use. Mr. John got a phone call and he asked me, like, Paul, I know you didn't do this, but have you bought cannabis equipment? It's like cannabis, if you don't know that's weed. Somebody stole our church credit card and they bought home cannabis equipment, and they also signed the church up for a monthly magazine about how to make cannabis. I was just looked at John, I was like, dude, that's dope, right? Oh boy, so sorry. Identity theft. We're talking about, maybe you've heard this, it's a Latin phrase called Imago Dei, and it means image of God. And so what we're talking about in January is, like, what does it mean that we're made? All of us probably have heard at some point that we're made in God's image, yes? This is probably not a new concept if you've been in church any amount of time. It's one of those phrases that we throw around and we don't probably know what it means, right? Like, we're made in the image of God, okay. But like, this one I want to go, dude, we're made in the image of God, right? So we're going to take a month and just talk about, like, what does that mean? What did Adam and Eve lose when they sinned in the garden? And, you know, we know this because we went through Romans, that we can't just say it was Adam and Eve, right? Because if it had been Wendy and Paul, we would have also made the same choice. Like, our hearts are far from God. We choose things that don't please him. What does that mean? What did they lose? What was God's plan to bring us back to the image of God, right? Did we lose that? Is it broken irreparably, or is it just a little messed up? What exactly does it mean? And so that's what we're going to talk about this month. This morning is probably going to be super, super simple. We have a big idea for every Sunday, but we also have a big idea for the whole series, which is why I had you talking about scams. Here's your big idea for the entire series. It just says this: the greatest scam wasn't financial, it was spiritual. The enemy scammed humanity in the garden, and we lost some things as a result of it. You can turn in your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. That's what we're going to read this morning. And while you're turning there, I'll just remind you about John chapter 10, verse 10. John 10:10 says that the enemy comes to, does anybody know? Steal, kill, and destroy, right? And then but, the Bible's full of big buts, and this is a big one. But Jesus says, I have come that you might have life and have life to the full. So it's going to seem like we're focused a lot on the first part of that verse this month, because I do want you to see that the enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy, and he did. But towards the end of the month, we'll get into that big but, right? Jesus came. He came to restore us, to redeem us, to rescue us. So I want you to think about this. You don't have to talk about it in your groups, but just think about it. Which parent do you most resemble? Which one of your parents do you most resemble? Parker and Will, we think this is hilarious. Like, we named them when they were still in the womb. Parker and Will, we prayed for them by name. We had no idea that Parker, who starts with P, and Paul, who starts with P, that we were going to be the ones that looked the most alike. And then Will and Wendy are somewhat similar. They're kind of more similar, so it's the P's and the W's. And we had no idea, right? I remember when I don't know what your relationship's like with your parents, but mine wasn't great with my dad when I was a teenager. It's very rocky, a lot of yelling, mainly because he was hard of hearing, but a lot of you, mainly because I was hard of heart, right? That's probably why. But we just did not get along. And I remember when people started telling me that I sounded like my dad. This was back when, I don't know if you know these things, but like they sit on a desk, and you pick this thing up, and it's got a curly wire. Have you ever heard of these? And like, some people would be known to like talk on it while they do this, and they would get all tangled up. Have you heard of these? They're called landline phones. we had those, and my dad was a doctor. And so you can imagine how much fun it was at my house when I would answer the phone and people thought I was my dad. And they would ask me about, like, medical stuff. And at first I would just go, hold on a second, Dad. But then I would tell them what to do. Then I got grounded, so I stopped doing that. That wasn't a good plan. The first time that somebody told me I looked like my dad, I wasn't sure I was excited about that because he was bald. And I didn't know if I wanted that or not. The older I get, the more people tell me I look like my dad, and I'm like, I just go look in the mirror and go, I do still have hair, yes, right? But one time, I've told the story a couple times. One time I was in a men's group, by the way, plug for Battle Tested, the last January 23rd here at the church. Men, we need to be together with one another, right? So join us that day. I remember being in a men's gathering, and I was sitting in a chair, and I had my legs crossed, and I had my hand like this. And while I was sitting there, I looked over, and my dad, who was right next to me, was sitting just like that, with his hand just like that. And it dawned on me, my gosh, I'm becoming like my dad. And so I just, like, spread my legs and put my hand way back, like anything to look anything like he didn't look. I didn't necessarily want to look like my dad, but I couldn't help it, right? Parker can't help but look like me. When people maybe when they see you as you were growing up, they would say, oh, you're the spitting image of your mom or your dad, right? Sometimes, and we have twins that weren't identical, but sometimes when you're an identical twin, you try not to be, right? You just want to be your own person, right? So sometimes the idea of, like, looking like somebody else can make us feel some kind of thing. I want you to know that you were made in the image of God. You look like him. You are like him. And the enemy came to steal that from us. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. I want you to see that we are image bearers. We are image bearers. We bear his image because we're his image bearers. Don't get lost in that. These are your 2 points. We are image bearers, and then because we're his image bearers, we bear his image. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. You lied to me. I don't know why you would do that. Right? You're like, that was so confusing. What I mean is, we talk about it like this. You are before you do. Identity before activity. A lot of people try to find their identity in their activity. Well, if I do all these things, maybe I'll figure out who I am. But the way God wired it was, if you know who you are, that informs what you do. The way that we were made is we were made in the image of God. We are image bearers. It's something that we have before it's something that we do. It makes sense now? Does that help? So we are image bearers. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. It'll be up on the screen for you as well. Then God said, and the reason that then is there is because this comes at the end of the long list of creation, right? All the things that God had created. And it says, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. We're made as image bearers. It's our identity. We are image bearers. Any of y'all into college athletics? You like to watch college sports? So if I say NIL, you know that means name, image, likeness, right? So in the garden, this was the first NIL deal, right? We were made in his image, in his likeness, with his name, right? So here's what it means. Image and likeness means literally resemblance, and it also means an idol. Idol is a great word to help us explain this. But it's hard to wrap your head around because we're taught to cast away idols. Yes, we should have no idols before God. But what an idol was a representation of a deity. And the word here, when it says we're made in his image, in his likeness, it literally means, in that culture, it meant idol. Like, you are a mini representation of something far greater, someone far greater. You are made in his image. You are like an idol. He says, let us make mankind. And it means that we are made in his image as relational beings. A lot of people like to play solo Christianity. It's not God's plan. Not how you were wired. Oh, please come to church in February. Please come. Please come to church in February and bring your best singing voice, because we're going to sing songs that represent how we're attached to one another. We're going to talk about why it would be so much easier to just be on your own and be loved by God and love God, but that's not how you were made. You were made to connect upward and outward. And this is the part that's hard, right? I know we all struggle sometimes with our connection with God, but let's be honest. If it was just us and God, life could be a lot simpler, right? I talked to somebody one time, and they had just stopped coming to church for a long time, and I saw them around town, and I was like, man, I really miss you. And I said, how are you doing? They said, I'm doing great, man. It's just me and God. I love it. I was like, yeah, it must be great to have to be able to live with God and not deal with all those one another verses in the Bible, right? There's a reason that we're together. There's a reason those verses are in the Bible. It's hard to do this. And so as we go through this month of January, a lot of you, if you're like me, are going to be like, this is awesome, man. I'm made in the image of God, to hang out with God, to be in his presence. This is awesome. This is like Bethel music all the time. Can I just do this? And are y'all tempted ever for that? I am. And I'm your pastor, right? But God says no, because we're created in the image of a relational God. He said, let us make man in our image. God is relational. And because we're made in his image, so are we. Turn to the person next to you and say, you should probably be a lot nicer to me. A lot of families really emphasizing that part today, I could tell. This is not a message, this is not a series on gender and sexuality, but I would be a really bad pastor if I did not mention to you that being made in the image of God means male and female. We just read it, right? Male and female. I only see two there. I'm not trying to be against science, but I'm just saying it's right there. This is how we were made, y'all. This is something we should not be ashamed of. Right? It's a good thing. I mean, you should hear Wendy's prayers at home. I hear in the prayer closet, oh, God, please help me, because Paul's so different from me, right? We need each other. We're different. It's a good thing. We need each other. As we go through the year this year, as we're together with one another, you know what you're going to start noticing? Gaps. You're going to start noticing places that aren't being met, needs that aren't being met. Areas of this church that could be better. And the temptation is going to be, well, I'll just pray for Paul. I'll pray for the pastors. I'll pray for the staff. I'll pray for them to figure it out. But actually what God says is no, I intentionally, in design, as I was creating people in my image, I made them with variety so that they could complete the gaps when they're together. It wasn't, hey, there's a real problem. Adam, do better. It was, Adam, I'm going to create somebody that can help you. You're going to be together, male and female. He created male and female. It's a big deal. So we are image bearers. This is who we are. We are image bearers before we do the work of image bearing. God's image is something that we are, not just something that we have. And that's really important, because as we get into what happened in the garden, the temptation is to start thinking only the people that are right with Jesus have his image. But everybody on the planet is made in the image of God. It is something that everybody on the planet possesses. We are made in his image, which is why the scam job by the enemy is so deep and destructive because it causes us to change how we view people. Well, I'm of those who ate from the tree, and I've gotten knowledge now, and I'm really growing, and you haven't, and you're terrible. And like, I go to church, so I look really good, but you're a sinner. No. How would it change how you see people if you were always remembering that they were made in the image of God? Social media would look drastically different if you remembered that the person that you were arguing with was made in the image of God. Our city would look drastically different if you started telling people who don't love Jesus that they look like him. But Paul, they don't. Sometimes they do. You can't hide it. You can't hide the resemblance when you look like what you were made to be. What if the church started calling out people who don't love Jesus and started saying things like, man, that encouraged me so much when I saw you pay for that person's meal, and I thought, that reminds me of my father. Because my father's a generous father, and you must be generous because you're made to be like him. And they'd be like, dude, literally, I lost a bet, and they made me pay for lunch. But still, you stepped up, right? I mean, can you imagine? How would that change the narrative? What if we as a church started calling out that in our city? How would it change the culture? How would it change the climate? We're in his image. It's something that we are, not just something that we have. That'll make a lot more sense next week, but it's just critical right now. Like, we're building the foundation, so just put it on the foundation level. I am made in his image. No matter where you are this morning with God, you are made in his image. Your neighbor that drives you crazy because they do yard work at 6:30 on Saturday morning, they're made in the image of God. The people that go to different churches and you wish they came here and you get mad at them because they're trying to get you to go there and you want them to come here, like, they're made in the image of God. Different churches, different pastors, like, we're all made in his image. Politicians that you don't agree with are made in his image. The car salesman that just ripped you off, made in his image. I said that like I just experienced it, but I didn't. I'm just clearing the air. That lady that's working at the DMV that you're mad at because she's just doing her job, she's made in the image of God. So I'm not even at the altar call yet. I just want to ask this question. If we're made in the image of God, how are you treating God day to day? Which gets us to the second point. I've only got two, and you were like, that one hit. We are image bearers. Here's the second point. And because we are image bearers, we do image bearing. Okay, tell the person next to you, give Paul a lot of grace. I was watching. Those of you that said nothing, I'm a little scared of you right now, but it's fine. We're going to plow through. Here we go. That's right. Because we do image bearing, this is what it means. Number one, it means that we represent God. Think back to an idol, right? An idol was a visible representation of an invisible deity. It still is. Just most of the idols that we see are to false gods, right? So if you, depending on what type of food you like to eat, you might go to an ethnic restaurant, and you, as you're eating, you might see them take some food and place it in front of an idol. That idol never eats that food because that idol's dead, right? But that idol represents an invisible God. So do you. You are an idol. You are an image bearer. You represent God. So when people saw Adam, they saw a picture of Yahweh. As Adam ruled, he was bearing God's image. He was ruling like God would rule because he's going to get a command, right? Like, be fruitful, multiply. I give you all the animals and the birds, and you rule over this planet. That's part of what it looks like to be made in the image of God, is that we have authority in this world. We rule like God would rule. Or do we? Have you ever had a conversation with somebody that doesn't go to church and asked them why? Have you been surprised that their answer wasn't, well, Paul is a terrible preacher? It's rarely ever about pastors. Although, I mean, sometimes it is. It's usually, I went to church, I kind of got to know some people, and then they weren't like what I thought they should be like. Can we just bring that into this conversation and say this? I went to church, I was around some Jesus idols, and I realized if that's what Jesus is like, I don't want any part of it. Because we represent what they can't see. And the question this morning is, are we representing him well? Paul says in Corinthians that we are therefore Christ's ambassadors. We go before and we make things look like Jesus would want them to look. We're a Pentecostal church, so you hear a lot of like the fivefold ministry gifts, and you'll hear like about apostles, right? And apostles is just a word that means that apostles would literally go into a city that Rome just captured, and they would go make that city look just like Rome, so that when Rome's leader came to the new city, he would think he was still in Rome because Rome owned it. Do we do that? Are we bringing heaven to earth like that? Are we making sure that our workplace begins to look like heaven would look? We're sent by him as ambassadors. We're sent as apostles to go do that. We represent him. We bear his image. And you can start to understand why the world gets confused. Maybe the world understands this truth more than the church does. The world knows that we're representing God. They know that, well, you're supposed to look like him, right? And I don't think you do, and now I'm confused. If we recognize that we're made in his image and we bear his image, it changes how we interact with people. Because I'm representing someone much higher than I am. We image, bear. We represent God in how we live, how we rule. Now, that's not to make you feel bad at all, right? Because all of us are going to fail miserably. Here's another thing that they had. Because they were doing image bearing, they represented God, but it also means that they walked with God. I love this part of the story when Adam and Eve lived in, I call them thin places. I'm not the first person to use that phrase. If you do a lot of like Lectio 365, those kind of meditative prayers, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I just said meditative and people don't know what to do with that. It just means you read the Bible and you think about it, right? And then you read it again and think about it some more. If you do those kind of devotions and you listen to people like over the pond, like you'll hear thin places a lot. And it just means a place where heaven and earth get really close. Sometimes when we're in worship and we sing about the holiness of God, it gets really thin for me, right? I can imagine like, ooh, we'll be singing this in heaven, and it's just like heaven is and earth just get really close. We're supposed to be bringing those places everywhere we go. Like when we walk into places, we're supposed to be bringing heaven to earth. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as is in heaven. We are the ones that bring that. We step into a place and we represent God. We are his image in that place. And it creates a thin place like Adam and Eve had. They had a thin place with God. They had a nearness with God. We'll see. You can see in Genesis chapter 3:8. We see this after the fall because God says to Adam, like, where are you? It says that God was in the garden in the cool of the day to walk with Adam, which means this. They did that all the time. Am I the only one that wants my quiet time to be like that? What'd you do for your quiet time? Walked outside with God. Literally. That'd be awesome. Adam had that. He walked with God in the cool of the day. He had fellowship with God. They were near each other. and they were near one another. Genesis chapter 2:25 says that they were naked without shame. You better believe I preached that a lot when I was a youth pastor. Man, God wants us to be not really naked, but just kind of naked, like it's metaphoric. And you have to explain to teenagers what metaphor means, right? And put your clothes back on, right? Naked without shame meant that like they were vulnerable. There was this beautiful, protected vulnerability in the garden. They had that with God. They were naked without shame. And if we're created in His image, and they were able to be together and vulnerable without shame, what does that represent about God? It represents that we don't have a God who lives in the shadows. We don't have a God who lives in secret. We don't have a God who only shows us a little bit about Him. He wants to fully disclose who He is to us. He's always talking, even if we're not always listening. He wants us to know Him, and He wants to know us. He wants that for us, to be naked without shame, to have no barriers between us and Him and us and one another. Before we planted the church and we were thinking of names, you can ask Wendy. She talked me out of this, and it's a good thing because you probably wouldn't be a member here. But I just want to start the Naked Church. I thought, what a great name, right? Hi, I'm Paul. I'm the lead pastor at the Naked Church. I'm sorry, the what? But just think about that. What would that look like if we were that close in relationship? You can't be that way with everybody. That's not what I'm saying, but you can be that way with some. And what a concept that you don't just go to a service and bump up against people, but you actually are known by them. You know them. Maybe you're not in the place that I'm in, but before I was ever a pastor and I was sitting in the seat like you are, I would get in church, I would get out of church, get in my car, and I would say things like this to God. God, why do I sit in the same place every Sunday behind the same person's head and I don't even know their name? Maybe that doesn't bother you. It ate me up. We have to know each other because we're made for that. We walk with God and we walk with each other. Now, we're getting ready to end this and I'm going to land it, and it's going to be weird for the people online and also probably for you. We'll have to edit all this out. I want you to talk to each other one more time, okay? Not 5 minutes, just a couple minutes, and here's what I want you to talk about. I want you to talk about what part of creation takes your breath away. Right? Is it the beach? Is it the mountains? Is it just I want to go to Mar Mountain and walk and hike? Or I don't know. I know when we went to Utah 4 or 5 years ago, and we'd heard about the red rocks, and then we saw them. It was all I could do not to wreck my car every time I drove somewhere. I was like, these things are amazing. What is it for you? What is it about creation? What part of creation takes your breath away? Take 2 minutes and talk to people around you. Go. Okay. Hey, we've already ruined the live stream and everything else. So let's just finish it off well. Just shout out some of the things that you said. Go. We had the exact same answer in our group. Everybody, I was like, what really just takes your breath away? And they all said, blah, blah, blah. Wendy loves the moon. Corey mentioned stars. I love the beach. Just sitting there, looking at the ocean and the horizon and just all of it, sand. So try again. What are some things? Blah, 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 blah. Mountains. What? Oh, Blue. I thought you said doing parkour. And I was like, that would be impressive. Yeah, that would take your breath away for sure at your last breath. Say it again. Oh, human beings. See, he stole my notes. He stole my notes. I love that too, by the way. You ever go to the mall and just watch people? Or wherever you are, I love to watch people. People can take your breath away in a good and bad way. Why do I have you thinking about creation? I want you to get this. When you look at the story of creation in Genesis, every day God creates something new, and He always says it's good. So all the things that everybody in this room talked about except for John, if they were creation-oriented, nature-oriented, those things are God said those things are good. But we do run past the best part of the story, and it's you. It's me. It wasn't until God created man in his image that he wrapped it all up and said, now it's not just good, it's very good. Tell the person next to you, treat me better now. Listen, let me leave you with a couple thoughts and then we'll pray. When we see that being God's image happens before we bear his image, it changes how we interact with God and with one another. Being his image means we don't have to prove ourselves good because we are good. Now, we'll talk in the weeks to come about how we messed it up in the garden. But God still sent Jesus to restore us back to the good he made us to be. We are created and it was very good. Sometimes we struggle to accept that, and next week we'll learn why. Here's what I want you to take away today. I want you to just spend a week, and I want you to meditate on this truth, that God looks at you in his image. He looks at me in his image, and he says, you're very good. You're very good. Now, I was raised in church, so I've got enough religion in me that I have a hard time spending a week thinking about how God thinks I'm very good. Because the first thing I think is, oh yeah, but I sin so much. He looked at Adam and Eve when he made them and said, you are very good. And when they fell, he didn't say anything different. When you interact with people this week, interact with them as if God would look at them and say that they are very good. As if there is something worth restoring in them. Because I promise you there is. And we're going to talk in the weeks to come about how he does that. How God restores us back from that fallen state where we find ourselves so often. We're still good. We're still very good. God smiles when he looks at you. And he smiles when he looks at the people that drive you crazy. And maybe if we smiled at them, things would change. Let's pray. Father, I recognize that this is a difficult concept, because it's one thing to just say we're made in your image, but when we really start to think about how that should bear fruit in our lives, all of us find ourselves like Isaiah when he saw you. Woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips, and we are. But I thank you that you are a God who is committed to restoring the image that you created us in. And so my prayer is that this week, as we spend time with you and we just marinate on that truth, that when you created us, you said it was very good, that you still see the value in us, or you would never have sent Jesus. That we would begin to see ourselves differently, not trying to prove anything to you, but just receiving and trusting what you say about us, and we would begin to interact with others differently as well. I pray that it would bring revival to our city, because people would suddenly see themselves the way you made them to be, and they would want Jesus in their lives to bring them back to it. In your mighty name we pray, Jesus. Amen.